This is the most front-loaded interest rate hiking cycle we've had for decades. We're coming from zero interest rates. The whole system got conditioned to believe that zero interest rates was forever, that injections of liquidity were predictable, and now we're adjusting. The UK.
Financial instability due to front-loading rate hikes. The heated debate about how central banks should respond to high and persistent inflation has focused primarily on how interest rates should go and how long they should stay there. A third issue, that of front-loading the increases, is particularly relevant in this rate cycle. After all, central banks are not just seeking to lower inflation without damaging growth and jobs. They also have to steer fragile financial systems in which a market malfunction can damage economic well-being. Consider the U.S. Federal Reserve having badly misdiagnosed inflation
The evidence
last
is
year.
finally going Powell's way. Team Transitory is going to win.
Several days later.
How long does inflation have to run above your target before the Fed decides maybe it's not so transitory?
Well, I think it's probably a good time to retire that word.
And falling behind its price stability mandate, the Fed significantly intensified its policies response over the last few months. The June rate increase for 75 basis points was the first of that size in 28 years, and the Fed has followed with two similar increases, a record, with a third one expected next week. This Fed rate increase cycle is the most front-loaded one in a long time. The cooling housing market, the sharp rise of the dollar, and the headaches caused for many countries are examples of its effects. Yet, reflecting how tardy the Fed response has been, the financial markets are pricing in an additional 1.75% or 2% percentage points of rate increases. The faster the rate increase cycle, the greater the risk of a large financial accident with nasty spillovers. After all, the financial system did what it was incentivized to do during more than a decade, in which markets were conditioned to believe in longevity of zero or negative interest rates, injected trillions of dollars of liquidity, and reinforced the belief in a central bank put that shielded markets not only from large asset price declines, but also what was once deemed normal volatility. Editor, roll clips. Fair use. Mr. El Irian is dropping gems here. From the Deacon Harold. Let's see him live in action to get some more content.
But there are people in the market who still haven't taken the Fed seriously, so they have not gotten themselves to a place where they're not going to have massive issues if the Fed doesn't slow down?
So we have, first of all, this is the non-banks, not the banks. So that's the good news, because the banks are in the middle of the payments and settlement system. The non-banks are not. So that's good news. Yes, there are certain. You can start with the zombie companies who are finding it much harder to refinance. And if they can get refinancing, the cost of this refinancing makes their numbers look completely different. Mm-hmm. Then you can go to various investors who over-levered. That's going to be an issue. So, yeah, we have to keep an eye on the third element, which is financial stability. It's not just about inflation and growth.
The undue part, excessive market volatility. Look, I think once again, the Fed did not understand the technicals. Once again, the Fed didn't understand the behavioral aspects of markets. So while Chair Powell went out of his way to be balanced, he did a few things that made the market hear just what it wanted to hear. First, confirm that we are downshifting in December. Second, do this ahead of the labor report, suggesting that maybe he knew something that others did not know. Third, talk about risks being now balanced, two-sided, and bring in his colleagues on the Fed. And then what he didn't mention, John, he did not push back in any way against what already was a significant rally in markets and a significant loosening of financial conditions. So while he said other things, and he was right to say other things, including warning about inflation staying, warning about our job not being done, he didn't realize where the technicals of this marketplace were, and he didn't realize the behavioral aspects. And that's why you got this overreaction, and now we're giving some of it back.
So, Mohammed, the equity market is basically back to where it was at the end of August when we heard from Chairman Powell at Jackson Hole. You talked about that easing of financial conditions off the back of the speech, the address from Chairman Powell earlier this week. Mohammed, do you think that means they have to go even further than we expect? And based on where you think the terminal rate's going to be, when they deliver projections on December 14th, how much higher up do you think that dot in 2023 needs to go?
So, John, it's going to be tricky. They've got a CPI report just before. It's going to be very, very tricky. I suspect that they will guide us to above 5. That's where I think they're going to be going. But this is really tricky. This is a situation where the Fed has to be very careful about what it communicates, because we don't need undue volatility. And when we come to talk about other segments of the market where there are already liquidity strains, we'll understand why you don't want undue volatility in this marketplace.
The Dow is up 20% now, Mohammed. So is that still a bear market rally, or do we call it a bull?
So I'll repeat what I've said over the last 3 or 4 times I've been on with you, which is, for now, the coast is supportive of risk assets going higher. If you look beyond the next few days and weeks, there are some great uncertainties, and we are yet to get enough information one way or the other. So this market is a market that's very attractive to tactical players. It's much tougher for long-term investors.
Recession or not, Mohammed?
Look, I'm not in the camp of 100% recession. I think the risk is uncomfortably high, but we can avoid it. But, Steve, I always quickly add, if, however, we fall into recession, which I hope we don't fall into the transitory camp. Don't fall into the trap of saying, oh, it will be short and shallow. Because if we do fall into a recession, there's a high risk that it will not be short and shallow. So keep an open mind, and let's not repeat the mistake of last year when we all embraced transitory inflation because we could look through it.
Is that because the Fed can't come in and the fiscal? Is that because the Fed and the fiscal side won't come in to help the economy at that point because of the inflation danger?
Yes, and also because balance sheets may be strong overall, but there's a good segment of the population that are hurting. Also, there's lots of stuff going on globally. Supply issues aren't going to disappear. I wrote an article in yesterday's Financial Times that goes through why we should be open-minded and humble about calling what a recession would look like, because there's simply too many uncertainties right now.
Hey guys, it's Jose, your regular Joe Blow again, keeping an eye out and my ears open to the situation at hand. And Mr. El Arian just keeps dropping gems. Let's use and enforce this information in our lives and in our finances. This is phenomenal information. And also keep watching and stay tuned to the Federal Reserve to see how much they are going to raise so we can move and plan accordingly. So guys, do your own research as well. And thank you for the support. And I'll continue to do my best to bring you the best, guys. And most of all, stay free.
It ain't hard to tell. I excel, then prevail.